I'm Neely Bruce, professor here at Wesleyan since 1974. And it's great to have so many people here who are my colleagues or friends for so many years, and many with a long-standing relationship with Wesleyan. We're going to talk about notation, and we're going to talk for a short period of time. I've asked everybody to make a statement, an opening statement of 3 to 5 minutes. And then we have plenty of time for discussion, both among ourselves and with your questions and responses. I'd just like to remind everyone of something that hasn't been mentioned so far, which is the truly remarkable book of John Cage, published by Dick Higgins, called Notations, which, of course, every page is a page of notation from a different composer. And is an extraordinary compendium that shows the variety of possibilities with mid-20th century notation. This book came out in the 1970s. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. If you're not, you can become familiar. The sooner the better. And there are a lot of pieces, the remarkable Cassiopeia, for example, of George Cacioppo, that can be performed straight out of the book. There are no instructions for this piece. It's just a beautiful piece of graphic notation which the performer interprets, and it's right there in the book. You get the book, you blow it up, you give everybody a Xerox copy, you have a performance. It's wonderful. Notation can take us many different ways, and we're just going to go down the table. So Pauline Oliveros immediately to my right. I'll pass the mic.
Okay, greetings everybody. So I'm very happy to be back at Wesleyan again, and I heard some rehearsals of my pieces, and I think it's probably notable actually to speak about notation of those pieces. The choir is doing sound patterns, which is a piece which is younger than I am. It's at 50 years old. It was composed in 1961, and it was a piece where I was leaving traditional notation. I left traditional notation sort of gradually, and so sound patterns was guided pitch patterns that the singers had to create, but they have some guidance as to what those patterns are. And there was just a two-line staff, I guess, where you had high notes and low notes and everything else in the middle. But that piece, writing that piece, was quite interesting because I didn't want to use a text. I wanted to use sounds, and so I was sitting there making all of these different kinds of vocal sounds, all of those kinds of mouth noises that one can do, and I didn't want to have anything that resembled a word, and so in order to notate for the singers what those were, that was pretty tricky. So I would sit there and go, and then decide how to notate that. So snapping fingers as you made a cluck sound. All of the sounds were then notated in my own form of notation. I did the piece because I wanted to send it to the Gaudiamus competition, and Georgi Ligeti was the judge for that competition, and I won the prize for best foreign work with that chorus. And Ligeti told me that it was very original, and then did L'Avventure. Okay. All right. So sound patterns has kind of made its way. It's very difficult rhythmically because the other thing that I was trying to do is defeat metrical systems, and so that the rhythms would be more organic. And so I added very pesky things into the notation, which were a lot of commas, you know, I mean, so that you couldn't stay strictly metrical. And I would change tempos and change signatures and many things to frustrate the singers, right? No, to make these kind of organic passages happen. So that was 50 years ago that I did that. And since that time, you know, notation has changed dramatically in the 50 years that we've been living and composing. In 1970, I created a body of work called Sonic Meditations. And that was a complete departure from traditional notation. There wasn't any traditional notation. It was all oral tradition where it was a set of instructions and what I was doing was directing attention to ways of listening and ways of sounding, so that these pieces could be done by anyone who wanted to participate. There was no notation to learn because people mostly understood English, except these were what I now understand to be algorithms. They were recipes, and the problem for people looking at the instructions was that they didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. And the instructions were really quite specific, although, as I say, people didn't know what was going to happen. Now, I'll give a simple example, which was a piece that I call Native. And it says, take a walk at night and walk so silently that the bottoms of your feet become ears. So that then becomes very individual to each person. You know, you can do it alone, or you could do it with a group, or whatever. So it had many different kinds of implications. The piece, there's the lullaby for Daisy Pauline that will be done tonight, and it also is an instruction piece. And then at the time I had added a soundtrack, which was cicadas and tree frogs. But tonight, the laptop orchestra is repurposing the way they play their computers so that they can play these samples of these insects along with the choir. The other piece is the new sound meditation, which again is an algorithmic piece with instructions on the direction of attention. And now that's the piece that the laptopers have to kind of repurpose how they approach using their computers in order to do the piece. And it's not all that easy because they have to make sounds acoustically, and they have to record on the fly. And the instruction is to make a sound and then listen and make either imitate some other sound. That means they have had to record it on the fly and then play it back, or to make a sound that no one else has made. And that's not an easy algorithm for the laptopers to do. Anyway, the rehearsal was very nice. It'll be interesting. And then the last thing I'll say is that I'm working on an opera. And the opera is called The Nubian Word for Flowers. And I have 3 layers to deal with. And there is a soundtrack, and the conductor is going to need to know what's happening on the soundtrack and what time it's going to happen. And then there is a 7-piece group of musicians who will be performing with guided instructions for improvisation. And then there are 4 singers with traditional notation. And so these three different streams have to be integrated. So I'm repurposing a spreadsheet in order to do this, so that I have all of the information on the spreadsheet, plus pasting in the traditional notation in the right time. And that's what I've been doing right now.